there's a problem with people coming on your video thing, whatever video thing you're watching, and telling you, believe in spiritual stuff. See this spiritual stuff, it's real. And I understand. That's what I'm doing right now. The problem with me and other people like me is that a lot of times it's like, okay, I guess I'll take your word for it. I mean, you're talking about things that I can't study for myself. I can't access those. I can't do a double-blind experiment on it. We're trying to fix that. We're trying to help you out. What we're trying to show you is that you can understand how the spiritual world works by looking at how the physical world works. In the last 3 episodes, we have looked at how this stuff you see around you in the park, animals, plants, minerals, I don't know if you see minerals, the rocks are minerals, they're at the park, are connected. All those things are connected to something like them in the spiritual world. There's like a spiritual counterpart to all of those things, and they're connected through this phenomena that Swedenborg calls correspondences. And even the most fundamental force in nature has a correspondence. So I'm talking about the sun. There is a physical sun, and then there is a spiritual sun. And they're linked together by this phenomena of correspondences. So as we learn about things like the sun, we can understand how things in the afterlife work. We're going to dig into that today and figure out what the spiritual sun is all about. And we're going to answer the burning question that you may never have had, which is God a sun god or a moon god? Swedenborg says there is a spiritual sun. Did you ever think about that? What's going on with the sky? Is there a sky in the afterlife? Is there a sun? Do you have days and stuff? This is what he says about it. This is from Heaven and Hell 117. Even though neither this world's sun nor anything derived from it is visible in heaven, you can't see into the physical world, there is a sun there, meaning in heaven. There is light and warmth. There are all the things we have in our world and many more, not from the same origin though, since things in heaven are spiritual, while things in our world are natural. So there's stuff that you would recognize, but the nature of it, what it's composed of and what it does is on a different level. But let's start looking at things that we're familiar with. So the physical sun. What's the sun made of? This is I'm no scientist, but here's a couple of explanations written by scientists. First of all, the sun is a huge ball of hydrogen and helium held together by its own gravity. It sounds majestic. Also, the sun is a huge glowing sphere of hot gas. Boomba, with you everything's gas. Most of this gas is hydrogen, it's about 70%, and helium, about 28%, but carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen make up about 1.5%, and the other 0.5% is made up of small amounts of many other elements, such as neon, iron, silicon, magnesium, and sulfur. The sun shines because it is turning hydrogen into helium via the process of nuclear fusion in its extremely hot core. And I say all this to you so that you understand the way that something physical works, that we all can look at and know and agree that it is, it's got structure to it. It's got stuff that it's made of. It doesn't just shine because it's shining because there's a process going on inside it. That is how reality is. So spiritual reality, if it's coming from the same source, would be kind of like that. You should see it's the same author behind it, right? So what's the spiritual sun then made of? This is an explanation from the scientist Emanuel Swedenborg. He says, heaven's sun is the Lord. So God is the sun. Light there. So what is the light that comes out? It's not helium or hydrogen, but it is the divine truth and warmth, the divine good that radiate from the Lord as the sun. So divine goodness is the warmth, divine truth is the light. The reason the Lord in heaven appears as the sun is that he is the divine love from which all spiritual things come into being. And through the agency of our world's sun, all natural things as well. That love is what shines like a sun. So the sun's, physical sun's nuclear fusion emits powerful heat, which produces light. That's the basis for the food chain on our planet. But in heaven, it's not about the sun, it's about the God of heaven and earth. So there is a process happening in God where you have divine love with all of its power and all of its incredible energy that would make the actual sun and all the amazing things that are going on there look like barely anything, like a puff of air, because there's so much power in love, and that love creates truth or radiates out truth through some kind of divine reaction that then spreads out and illuminates and warms all of sort of the spiritual equivalent to the universe, or the solar system. And everything there just has to do with your distance from the source. Just like I just think of the solar system when I see this, because you've got these different, the earth is like it is because of its distance from the sun. So the third heaven is like it is because of its distance to the Lord. Second, distance to the Lord, and so on and so on. The heaven and hell are like they are because of their distance from the Lord. The spiritual sun, the active divine love in there, emits this divine heat, which is love and the goodness that comes out of that, which produces divine light, which is wisdom and truth. And these things flow out there through all these layers of reality, and they do the same thing the sun does for us here. All life begins from God, God's love and God's truth. Just like here, if you've got a plant in a pot, there's got to be light for photosynthesis. There's got to be enough warmth that it doesn't freeze. That is how fundamental the presence of God is to all existence on the spiritual level. So I'm telling you that God is like the sun in heaven. And you're probably saying, what does that even mean? What are you even talking about? I'm saying the way that we experience the sun on earth is the way people in heaven experience God. I mean, we've talked about there's lots of ways that you can see God and interact with God in heaven. We talked about in previous episodes how God appears in human form. Sometimes that fundamentally God is human, and that all of the things angels see around them in the landscape, all the trees and the mountains and the houses do exhibit aspects of what God is like. And that teaches them something about God. But there is a way in which angels are constantly just seeing their Creator. In Heaven and Hell 118, the Lord does not appear as a sun in the heavens, but high above them, and not directly overhead, but in front of angels at a middle elevation. So, like, he's up in the sky. God is up in the sky. Which makes sense, because if you had the sun down on the earth, it's over. You get burned up. It's too powerful. The nuclear fusion is too powerful. The love of God is too powerful. But it can be up there. God can be up there. And we can be seeing that love from where we are. That you're standing in heaven, and it's like, oh, there's love itself just sitting right up there. It would be too much to encounter directly, so they experience the constant presence, angels experience this constant presence of God as a sun up above them. And since that sun appears at a middle height in front of them, you can always see God. It's interesting that he gives that detail. It's not like above your comprehension. It's more like, okay, you're in at least my peripheral all the time, and can be reminded God is there. And that experience in heaven actually filtered down into religious practices of ancient cultures all over the world. In Heaven and Hell 119, Swedenborg says, for this reason, when the early people were engaged in their divine worship, they faced the sun in the east. It is why they set their temples to face the east. Not because you would want to worship the sun like the hydrogen ball in the sky, but because that object, sacred object, as all objects can be sacred if you understand their meaning, is showing you what God does for us on a spiritual level. So to say, okay, that's going to lift my mind up to think about what God is like. And the disciples of Jesus Christ even got a glimpse of this spiritual reality, that the God in himself shines like crazy. This is heaven 119. The Lord's appearance as a sun in heaven may be inferred from his transfiguration before Peter, James, and John when his face shone like the sun. This is how the Lord was seen by those disciples when they had been lifted out of their bodies and were in the light of heaven. Because on earth, you just had Jesus Christ. I just had Jesus Christ. That's it. You had Jesus Christ in front of you. This was the human manifestation of God, and they could see it. Like, oh, this is great. I sometimes understand you, sometimes I don't. But as soon as they went into their spirit and were able to see what's going on spiritually, Jesus in front of them started to shine like the sun, because God shines. But even that core experience of seeing God's presence and the radiation that comes out of it is experienced differently by different people in different parts of heaven. There's only one God. This is very important. Swedenborg is adamant about how you got to know there's just one God. But that said, God appears in different ways to different people. It's not that God changes, but we as the thing that observes God, we are different. And so we observe God in a different way. This is going to get weird, we're going to talk about here. But that's never stopped us before. Let's dive in and try to unpack it. What you have to understand first is that there are different parts of heaven. Just broadly, Swedenborg talks about a third, a second, and a first level of heaven. And the different levels of heaven are full of different kinds of angels. So angels who are in the third heaven are those who primarily follow love. Love is what drives their life. And they get that love from God, and they're very close to God. Angels in the middle heaven, whom Swedenborg calls spiritual angels, they primarily follow truth. The truth, the principles from God are what direct their life. They're both good, they're just different. So we have these two different kinds of angels, and what you follow in your life affects everything about you. Okay? And you can probably see this is going to say that these two are going to see God, the same God, differently. So let's see what Swedenborg says about this in Heaven and Hell 118. We'll keep going through there. We already read this part where it said, the Lord does not appear as a sun in the heavens, but high above them, and not directly overhead, but in front of angels at a middle elevation. Maybe you thought, okay, that's not that weird. But look what he says next. He appears in two places. In one for the right eye, and in another for the left, noticeably far apart. For the right, okay, that's weird. Two gods, like two appearances of the same God, but different places. Wait, for the right eye, he looks just like a sun, with much the same fire and size as our world's sun. For the left eye, though, he does not look like a sun, but like a moon, with similar brilliance, but more sparkling, and with much the same size as our Earth's moon, but he seems to be surrounded by many apparent lesser moonlets, each similarly brilliant and sparkling. What? Why? What's going on with that? From this, we might picture, okay, so you've got God is sort of in these two places, these two different eyeballs, but you got to understand everything in the spiritual world has a meaning. The spiritual world is full of appearances. This is not going to weird any angel out to see these two different things. There's so much representation and symbolism. Look at the book of Revelation in the Bible. Do you know that? Have you read that? There's just all kinds of stuff going on. It's like the craziest motion graphics are happening all over. Symbolism is everywhere. So obviously it's not just symbolism, but it's an expression of a reality. So from this description, we might picture angels all seeing, okay, there's God as a sun over there, and then that same God as a moon over there, surrounded by the little moonlets. But then he says this. The reason the Lord appears in two places, everything has to have a reason. That's my favorite thing about the whole Swedenborg thing. Well, maybe I'll take that back at some point, but I love that Everything here physically has a reason. There's got to be some reason that this weird thing happens. The reason the Lord appears in two places so differently is that he appears to people according to their receptiveness. So he looks one way to people who accept him through the good of love, which remember, these angels in the third heaven accept him through the good of love. In another way to people who accept him through the good of faith, which these angels in the middle heaven are truth-oriented. To people who accept him through the good of love, he looks like a sun, fiery and flaming in response to their receptivity. These are people in his heavenly kingdom. To the people who accept him through the good of faith, though, he looks like a moon, brilliant and sparkling in response to their receptivity. These people are in his spiritual kingdom. This is because the good of love corresponds to fire, so that fire in its spiritual meaning is love, while the good of faith corresponds to light, so that light in its spiritual meaning is faith. Okay, I get that more truth-oriented people would see something that is a symbol of faith in God, and more love-oriented people would see something that is a symbol of love from God. But does that mean that you never see the sun in the middle heaven? You only see the moon anywhere you go? And what is this with the right and the left eye? Wouldn't all angels but have both eyes? So why wouldn't you see both? I think for the eye stuff, there's this thing that's called ocular dominance. You have two eyes, but one of them is kind of calling the shots. Actually, you can check. Do you know which eye is dominant for you? Here's an easy way to check. Make a little shape with your hands, like a little triangle. Go ahead, just do it. I don't care if there's people in the room with you and you have headphones so they don't know what you're watching and they're just going to see you do this weird thing. Just do it. Put your hands out, a little triangle, and center that triangle around something. I'm centering it around the camera right now. Okay, you got it? It's right in the middle there. Now close your left eye. Open your left eye. Close your right eye. Open your right eye. Which one, when it was closed, did the hands move for, and which one did it stay the same? Whichever one it stayed the same for, that's your dominant eye. So while they're both giving input, that's the one you gauge everything by. That leads how you see through things with both of your eyes. Could it be that you've only got one God, but there are these two fundamental aspects of God? So you're maybe familiar with God as love, but God is also truth as well. And actually, these two things are always one in God. It's just like light and heat are coming out simultaneously from the sun. So let's say that your average celestial love-led angel has a right eye or love eye ocular dominance. I hope somebody just walked into the room and heard me say that. They're like, what's gotten into you? What has the algorithm fed you? And angels in the spiritual heaven have a left eye or truth ocular dominance, so that while the Lord in both of his aspects is here, when angels from the middle heaven look, they see the love, so they see God as the sun. And when angels from the spiritual heaven look, they see the truth, so they see God as the moon. That's cool. I like that. The only loose end, I feel like, is that, would that mean it's always nighttime for spiritual angels, or do they never really see the sun? Doesn't quite seem like heaven. Here's a couple of possible clues for that. In Secrets of Heaven 1531, Swedenborg says, "For proof to me that he appears before heavenly angels as a sun and before spiritual angels as a moon, the Lord in his divine mercy opened my inner eyes to look all the way into heaven. There I saw clearly a radiant moon ringed by many smaller moonlets, whose combined light was almost as strong as the sun's." And then in Spiritual Experiences 4219, "A brilliantly shining moon was shown to me, surrounded by many small moons similarly shining. The light was almost solar in brightness, quite lively. I was informed that the Lord so appears to the spiritual angels, but to the heavenly angels as a sun, and that they have their light from this source in heaven. Thus that the light of the spiritual is from the Lord appearing as the moon." So a full moon can get pretty bright, and it sounds like what he's saying is that the faith incarnation that God appears as, it's like it might as well be a sun, because it's so bright. It's got those moonlets. It's like you get the experience of the sun. Like for all intensive purposes, you would just see, oh, I'm up here. There's a sun. But if you knew what you were looking for, you could tell, oh, this is actually a really brilliant moon. So could it be that in the spiritual kingdom, it feels like having the sun up there, lighting up the environment, but it's got this white light. The spiritual heaven is full of white light, which is more of a lunar light, and the celestial or heavenly heaven is full of golden or really sun flame-like light. I mean, it could be. The reason he appears to the eyes is that the deeper levels of the mind see through the eyes, looking from the good of love through the right eye and from the good of faith through the left eye. You see, everything on the right side of an angel or one of us corresponds to what is good and yields truth, while everything on the left side corresponds to that truth that comes from what is good. The good of faith is essentially truth that comes from what is good. The physical sun provides direct light coming from the heat or from the fusion at its core. And the moon, it doesn't directly provide light, but it's reflecting the light that's from the sun. This is a correspondence of how love is the real source of enlightenment. That is how we wake up spiritually. And truth or faith is not the real source, but it can reflect what comes from love. It is what we see by when love is not obvious or apparent. So maybe heavenly angels see God as a sun because they're more tuned into what's really going on. They're receiving this love directly from God's love. And spiritual angels, they see God as a very bright moon because they're receiving the light more indirectly, though, through faith. So they're seeing the reflection, the truth that comes out of the love, but not the love itself that clearly. I mean, that's how I interpret this passage, but let me know what you think in the comments. So is God a sun god or a moon god? Kind of both. I mean, maybe technically more the sun, but the moon is this reflection, emanation from God. God contains all that. It's us who see God differently. And you notice that Swedenborg said in Now 118 that each of us have a love side and a truth side to us. There's times when we're seeing God as love, and that's what's moving us forward. There's times when we're seeing God through truth, and that's what's moving us forward. Whatever is in front of angels, it's the right thing to lead them because of the state they're in. I think what we can take away from this is that God is there. God is always somewhere in the sky. You just got to know where to look, and maybe you can clue a bit into, am I being led right now by love or led by truth? Both are good. Both are for different states. The important thing is just keep looking up for them.